I am Mamadou Merchant. Welcome to the Viewpoint. Today we're going to talk about education, education, education. And my guest today is the first woman principal of St. Peter's High School. This was way back in 1985. Since then, she had become Minister of Education from 1999 to 2004, whereupon she joined UNESCO as Director of Basic Education, rising to become Director for the UNESCO Bureau of Education in Africa in 2008. And then years later, the Bureau morphed into the UNESCO Multisectoral Regional Office for West Africa, which she headed until 2016 when she moved east to lead the Regional Office for Eastern Africa in Nairobi, where she remained until she left UNESCO in June 2021. I've got here Anne Therese Ndong-Jatta. Welcome to the Viewpoint.
Thank you very much.
That's it. So you left UNESCO last year. So is that sort of retirement? Is it curtains now for that sort of work? Or merely, as some people put it, to put on fresh tires for another endeavor?
Good question. Now, for now, I don't think of putting on fresh tires. I believe it's been a long journey, and probably it's time to just come home and, you know, be part of the local community.
Absolutely. So, just recently, not long ago, I think perhaps a month or less really, the West Africa Senior Secondary Certificate Examination results population generated lots of talk, reactions anyway, particularly on social media. You were one time minister. I wonder if you are a minister today of education and you get this result, this performance, what feelings and thoughts would be generated in you?
It's a good question. But first, let me just back off a little bit and say, with media and social media today, things get hyped. And what one needs to look at would be trends, over the period. And except that in the past we didn't have so much publicity, in my view, I believe nothing much, fundamentally, nothing much has changed. Why do I say this? Because when you look at the education system as a whole, it's not catering for more than 4 or 5% of those who should go to university. So, I mean, this is just a misunderstanding of the bigger issue. If we really want to see more through, we must make sure we open that neck. You know, examinations always is selective, and it's always the brightest and the best that will go through. But if you ask me, once upon a time in this very country, of the whole student population, not more than 40, at most 45, would go through sixth form. And that was the la creme de la creme. And so what are we talking about? In terms of percentages, I see the same trend. But in terms of policy articulation, given the present situation we are in, probably we should go back to interrogate. What do we need? And who do we serve? Because the education system is still very much, mirrored after what you used to have as the colonial system, where you really have children go to school to serve certain purpose. Now, is that purpose still the same? If it is different, what do we do about it, and how are we demonstrating that?
Exactly. And but I will have to ask your reaction to this. The permanent secretary at the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education said this year's results are better than 2021's results. I mean, it's almost like trying to put an enforced smile onto it. But there's something more important, perhaps. It's that the focus of the ministry, you were a minister before, the focus of the ministry was concerned about the bottom level. This means we want to reduce the failure rate to 0. That's the intention of the ministry. Our target is just not to concentrate on those privileged few. Is that a right focus? One understands what needs to do at the bottom. But again, one could have equally said, I want to increase the number of students who would get 5 credits, as they say, including maths and English. So what do you make of that, focusing on the bottom level? It's a policy.
Well, I think it's one that could create mixed reactions. In general, when we talk about quality learning, you want all to benefit. And the basic question would be, how do we make it happen? It is not dependent on the ministry's effort alone. This is a societal issue, and we need social transformation to see that change. And it starts very much at the home level. What do parents want of their children? And how do they prepare them for school? And what are schools doing to prepare children for the world of work? It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody have to go to university. As a minister, you know, and having had, you know, extensive background in assessment, I had never been for assessment. You know, I mean, this examination is a lot of resources wasted because you are only selecting 2-3% in the whole of the continent. We do not have more than 6% at the university level. So if you have that as a situation like the case in Japan and all these Asian tigers, they really assess the needs of the economy. What do we want going forward? What type of skills do we need? And then you start organizing a tracking system where you have flexibility of entry and exit. You come in, you do something, you go out, you pick up some skills, you want to really refurbish those and come in for something better, rather than have it so rigid. Very much, like I said, mirrored over the kind of arrangement we've always enjoyed. And it's nothing but frustration, because once you cannot go through this very narrow neck of the system, you feel you're no good.
That's it. Well, but that's a very interesting one there, because it might invite the question, then is education really simply for the economy? You know what I mean? That's sort of instrumentalized, sort of.
No, I wouldn't even.
Exactly like
I wouldn't
that.
even say it that way, because you know, even recently I was trying to explain this when I had the book of Taft launched. I said education looks at 4 pillars broadly. You know, it's about the person, the self, and what you want to become. And sometimes what you want to become doesn't start with work. You go into a lot of research, you go into a lot of internship, you're really navigating to see what you want to become. So in education, you have to really build in certain value system so that the person enjoys learning and you know, selection of areas where they have the talents. And so you learn to be, and you also learn to know, and we don't rush it. You see, I mean, in general, in Africa, you with this kind of education examination system, it's like you are rushing the person to know. So it's a lot more of pumping in information than really helping knowledge to be built gradually over time. So you learn to know, and what are the areas of your interest for which you really want knowledge. And today, with the technology, the advancement of technology, you can do that much more than just sitting in the classroom. And then you have the aspect that looks at learning to do. Whatever it is you're learning, you want to be able to do something. You have mastery in something. You know, I mean, so here we talk about TVET, but even in technology, it goes beyond just the brick and mortar idea of TVET. So you learn to do. You have to acquire skills for life, skills for work. And when we say skills for life, it includes even just the socialization. And then finally, the 4th pillar, and this has been you know, a focus of UNESCO for quite a while. We're still looking at rethinking education, but it can never go beyond these 4 pillars. And the 4th pillar is learning to live together in peace. The world is in turmoil because we don't even know how to tolerate one another. We always feel that, you know, it's me, it's my, it's I, and therefore everything else coming from the other person is not valued in the same way. But when you begin to learn to live together in peace and harmony, you can be more tolerant, you can be more appreciative, because the human condition is such that, you know, whatever one does is consciously done. It's not by accident. Mm-hmm. If I choose to come here, I consciously wanted to be here. With all your persuasion, I would not come. But I want to come, so I'm here. And so these are the kind of aspects that we need to get from our education system. And it's not just a school. So I want to separate schooling and education. Education can be at home, in the streets, in the marketplace. You're learning. all these 4 pillars as you go and navigate through life. And when you arrive at where you want to be, then maybe we allow those who feel they want to go to university to take that examination for university. Otherwise, they could write an examination for the polytechnic. Or they simply just have a school leaving certificate and go out into the world of work. But meanwhile, these 2 openings have some flexibility that would allow the person entry when they so choose to pursue some kind of knowledge or skills. And that flexibility we do not have today. I made reference of Japan, for instance. Like, you know, I mean, one time we had this exchange on quality learning, and a particular CEO said to me, if I'm to hire my manager, I'm not going to look at somebody who has an MBA. I would hire somebody who is scientific in thinking, who would be able to solve problems. You know, I mean, so allowing ourselves into professionalization before we acquire adequate knowledge of human existence, of science and technology, we narrow ourselves to a point where we cannot operate outside of that box. And that's why the rethinking education has to go beyond examination, continuous assessment. If all these kids were helped to understand that all what they do on a daily basis adds up to their terminal examination results, they will do so well, and nobody will be failing. But you want to capture that human intellect within a moment of time when the person may not have been well, the person may have had some bad experience, the person may not be as prepared. And you go into the examination hall, you have some kind of mental freeze. At the end of the day, they say you fail. And that becomes a stigma that stays with you for life. And if you ask me, I'm not for examination. So I'm not a good person to even deal with this issue of the examination. I feel there are so many biases, and all it creates is more of corruption, because you have a lot of examination malpractices because people want to pass the examination.
Yes, this is quite interesting, because I've heard some Scandinavian countries where children, they don't take exams.
Yeah.
Quite interesting. But I wonder though, what traction, as it were, does that idea hold, particularly within Africa, within our zone? How do you see it?
It's not been easy. You know, I was here when we scrapped the common entrance examination, and it created a lot of hullabaloo. You know, I mean, I got called all sorts of names, but I had from day one been against this idea of selection and putting the weight more on preparing the teachers and the students to enjoy learning and to get the best out of it. And when we started this exchange, it was with the West African Examinations Council, where I was government's representative. And it was made easier when I became minister to say, oh, colleagues, let's go for it. And we introduced it in West Africa, uninterrupted basic education. And that is what got me the job at UNESCO, because when I met with the Director General and we were really, you know, sort of propounding on this issue of uninterrupted basic education, this was education for all movement at the time. No better way to make it happen than to remove all these bottlenecks. But it's not simply just removing the bottlenecks, but ensuring that the teachers are equipped with the skills and competencies to assess the students and help them learn. The question is learning. You set the targets for the students. You talked about curriculum. What should the student learn by age 3, by age 4, by age 5? So by the time you really get to the point where you're assessing the student, you're assessing on certain set skills that would help the student perform well in whatever choices they make later on in life.
But that's an interesting one. But one can also perhaps make the point that, well, I thought education was really about sorting and selecting.
Shouldn't be.
So we grew up, as it were, with that mindset, yeah, as it were. And some people might say that having this competitive world it's good. You know what I mean? Best ideas emerge out of competition. It's good for the culture. It's good for the society.
Not
in many ways. You don't see it that way,
Not
no.
necessarily. I mean, you made mention of Scandinavia, for instance. Finland, for instance, they don't have any of this rigor. You know, I mean, you know, there are set targets and what have you, and students are allowed to go through and parents engage. Of course, you will have the home participating a whole lot more. They do not write homework. They don't write examinations, yet when they do that particular global assessment, they always emerge top. And so of recent also you have Canada doing the same. Continuous assessment is the best way to prepare your teachers, prepare your students, involve the parents to really engage with the students at home and at school to do well. There wouldn't be that fear of really being caged. Most of our schools today, you know, can qualify for a kind of a factory. You push them in and you push them out because there isn't much but just to give them time in school. Not much learning is taking place. Some would go through the system, they can read properly, they can write properly, they can speak properly. So then what are the basic skills? And communication skills are the best. You know, if as a journalist, for instance, you want to make sure you ask the right questions. You know, sometimes when I listen to journalists, you know, I'm not criticizing journalists, you know, I wonder, you know, I mean, how articulate are they in order to get the best out of this person? Some of the questions, you know, really are not far-reaching. So you miss an opportunity, you see. So there are a lot of things we have to do, and it's simply because we don't give much time to reflecting on what education we need for our kids.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's then here try to, I hope that I will ask the probing questions. Try to portray a kind of country profile, as it were. I understand that when it comes to, how do you see it? There's been a lot of kids, women, girls especially, recently going to school. How do you see that? Because we are told that when it comes to enrollment, yes, we do enroll a good number, but what is the outcome of that education? Well, that's quite something else. How do you see this trend?
Well, this is why I spoke initially of social transformation. When I look at what is happening today, you know, I mean, the home has a part of the blame to carry. You know, I mean, back then in the days when I was in St. Peter's, I know things have changed and emerged. I helped to inculcate in the kids that you have to wait. You have to really delay gratification for later. But today everything is now. You want everything today. And it's like a kind of race for the material. So the value system doesn't go deep enough in searching for knowledge, in acquiring the appropriate skills based on what you are good at. We all have different skills and talents. Do we have enough time to search for these and to be guided so that at the end of the day they feel satisfied? You don't choose a career based on what your friend is doing. Your friend may be doing something that your friend likes, but is that good for you? And so therefore, unless there is a renewal of our thinking, our mindset about living, it's a big question, because education is really to bring the best out of you, good about what you're doing, not for the sake of the money, but just the pleasure of really serving. Because it is not about me anymore after a point in time. It's about what can I bring to others? How can I bring joy to others? How can I help people feel more fulfilled? Today what we look at is more of aggrandizing, you know, collecting, whether we need it or we don't need it. My neighbor has it, I must have it. And the kids have that really, you know, in them, because everybody is looking over the other person's shoulder. The grass is greener over there. And that's why you have this situation of even those who would have completed high school going back way. Those who have gone to university going back way. What are they searching for? Are they searching to become? Are they searching to know? Are they searching for skills, life skills, to be able to work, earn a living, decent work, where they would feel satisfied? But today, I think those values, we are missing them. One of integrity. All these things are learned over time from the home to the school and out in the larger society. But if you do not have that in you, anything goes. Let's take a basic kind of example, simple. And my students who are listening to me will tell you this. I used to tell them, you're wearing a watch. Do you know what the purpose of that watch is? Is to tell you the time. And in this particular case, you need to know the time, to be in school on time, to be on time for your classes, and nobody must tell you. Look at your watch and you tell yourself, how much time do I have before I get to that gate? And, you know, I mean, these were young people who now were helped to understand, to respect time. But today, it is not the case. So, I mean, unless we have a social transformation, where parents come up to understand what they want for their kids, where kids are helped and nurtured to understand what is best for them, and they go to school not really trying to fight a teacher, fight a system, but to get the most out of it. And then our school system has to be a little bit more flexible. You know, I come home here, I watch the summer, it's like the kids are still going to school. When do they have leisure? Mm-hmm. When does the brain have that kind of space to begin to just enjoy who they are, where they are?
Yes, but just before we go into that, I mean, this education on social norms, as it were, that relationship. Yes, one can remember, I think in the 80s, and one is not trying to romanticize back then, but it appears as if there were more values, you know, integrated. What do you make of it? How do you compare then and what we see now?
No, I think, you know, probably things have grown. Maybe back then, you know, it's not easy to just draw the comparison because maybe you had fewer people going to school and they valued education, their parents valued, whether they were educated or not. You know, they expressed it, they would come out, they want to see their kids learn, they come to ask about it. Today, like, everybody is busy. You wake up in the morning, brum, 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 they are all out, you don't see each other until night. When do you have time to even sit and have that quality time with your family? You know, I mean, so you are on your own and you learn through your peers. And you know what peer learning is just what is trending. So either it's music, is the way they dress up, the way they walk, and they find excuses to be out of the home all the time. And most of the time, it goes unnoticed because the parents are busy there, you know, struggling for a living. And yes, they need that as well. But we need that quality time. So there should be that balance. You know, I wouldn't draw the comparison and, as you put it, romanticize the past, but probably with the growth in population, because nobody is regulating the population growth rate. You have very big families still. You know, I mean, you need to really feed them, clothe them, basic needs. You go out there, everything is expensive. So it's really frustration for the parents. Even if they're listening to me, they will say, well, you know, you have it good, so you can say what you're saying. But definitely not enough time is spent at the family level to be able to inculcate some of these ideals and norms. So anything goes. They pick it up here and there. And, you know, I mean, whatever trends is what they will pick up.
Yes, so you reckon that family breakdown is really what is reflected in the education? Yeah.
It's the problem is not the Ministry of Education. I said it. And some time ago, somebody was, you know, a priest was even in the pulpit, you know, saying to the kids, to the parents, you know, take up your responsibilities. You know, I mean, we have to start. The first teacher is the parent. It's not the school. The first teacher is the parent. You would have prepared that kid ready for school before the kid gets into school. And so if the home and the school work in harmony, probably we'll see some change. But the larger society as well, I think government has to also examine some of the facilities and what do they really bring as add-on so that schools can better serve students. Are the teachers well prepared? Are they well paid? Are they well trained? Do you have the right curriculum? Do you have adequate books? So it's a balancing act. Government has its own responsibility. There's a lot of overcrowding. Some of the schools look decrepit. You know, I mean, you know, I mean, that's a responsibility of government plus the school administration plus the community. But definitely, I don't see why students would want to stay long in school and enjoy school, because the environment is just not right.
So, but do you see that when you were a minister, late 90s, early 2000s, do you reckon the challenges that you faced are perhaps more or less the same challenges that the current minister would face? So not much movement, as it were. Well, how do you see this progress, our journey?
If I had stayed long enough, probably I would have been able to convince WAEC to look differently at examination. And then I would have made learning a joy. Because really, I believe we must work towards a curriculum that makes children happy. We must work towards a policy that makes the citizen happy. And if you look at what happiness is about, then we'll start the corrective measures. I really, at the time, I would say the challenges were there, but I used to also challenge the donors. When they come in and, try to propose to me one thing that doesn't sit well with me, I say no. Like at the time, having, sort of benefited from a system where I had to do my university abroad, the first thing I focused upon was, no, we need a university. And when the World Bank would not provide the resources, we looked for other alternative means. And the system runs almost the same up till now. And so, therefore, I believe the problems are the same. The magnitude of it probably seems to be more than it was, because you have more students enrolled now than before. But we need social transformation, and we need the home to step in, step up. Government also to do their bit, and then students and teachers would do the rest.
That is it, isn't it? That's the issue now. So, given the circumstances that we are in, I imagine that in the consensus, teacher would ask, still, what can I do? Isn't it? We start from that base. So, as a country, when you look at things now, where do you think we must begin? I know that the larger question, obviously, is the social one, but as a teacher, as a ministry, you are expected to do something.
No, it's true.
That sort
I think we should just, shock everybody, overhaul the system. And use technology as well.
But you see, now it will be difficult, isn't it, for an individual country, isn't it? Because we are part of WAEC, we are part of all of these transnational bodies.
And what does it add? What's the benefit? What does it add, except to serve the 6 or 7% of students who would make it to university? It doesn't serve any other purpose. The majority are left out there. You have high unemployment. But if you had a kind of tracking system where, you have different areas of work for which institutions could be developed, then you know that you start this business of tracking them very early based on their area of interest. A lot of thinking has to go into it.
That's what I was referring to here, was that imagine a country sort of trying to go alone, as it were. Okay, we're going to scrap examinations.
No, you won't go alone.
You can't. They say you can't. You have to carry everybody with you, so it drags, doesn't it?
We did it for grade 6 examination. The same process can continue. There used to be grade 6. Where there used to be the same hue and cry over a number of students. And even at that time, the challenge was not so much that students were unintelligent, but there weren't enough space or places for students to move from 6 to 7. And so if you come up with a policy that talks about uninterrupted basic education 1 to 9, what would your policy strategy be? It would be to begin to create places which creates a bottleneck for those to move from 6 to 7, and so on and so forth. And so that was our focus with the World Bank, to make sure that all of those who are in this first level can move to the second level, and we concentrate on training more teachers to a higher level, and also looking at the salary structure, the remuneration, etc., etc. That must be a continuous kind of reflection in any education endeavor. Teachers are very poorly paid. At the end of their life, they have nothing. And those that they would have taught would have become something. That's most unjust and unfair. And so we must give more to teachers.
That's it. We'll just end there and go on a short break. Don't move. We'll be right back.
Q Money, the biggest mobile money service in the Gambia, has taken mobile banking to the next level. Now, you can link your Q Money wallet with your bank account. Yes, link your Ajib or EcoBank accounts with your Q Money wallet and get instant access to your cash anytime. No need to queue at the bank anymore. Transfer funds from your bank account to your wallet or your wallet to your bank account using Q Money Bank Link is the fastest, most secure and convenient way to transfer funds between your wallet and bank account. For more information, call our customer care on 133. Q Money, Sunyu Kalpe. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to the Viewpoint. I'm Mamadou Mbouch, and my guest today is Antares Ndong Jata, and we're talking about education. Just before the break, we were talking about how poorly paid the teachers, their conditions really awful. That's very true. But also quite interesting as well, and perhaps linked to it, in a recent World Bank report on our education, saying that really, when it comes to educational outcomes and the teacher qualities, what we try to do to train lots of teachers, but then one wonders what happened.
Well, I think just like I gave you the example before of Finland, for instance, they go for the best. You should be able to attract the teachers. You should be able to attract the best to the profession. Those who go into teaching, they go in as the last resort. Very few would go in because they love teaching. Because at the end of the day, they must really be able to live decently. This is the reason why I say we still have to go back to this issue of how we remunerate our teachers. You make it attractive, you will attract the best minds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's it. So really, here this brings us, doesn't it, to some extent, to the socio-economic context. Mm-hmm. Isn't it? That's really what the issue is here. But then what? This is unbelievable, because when we look around us, for instance, in tertiary education, most teachers are from Sierra Leone or Ghana, at least in the urban, let's put it that way, in the urban areas. Mm-hmm. So how can we make teaching attractive for top Gambian brains to come in?
Well, let's try it out and we'll see the results. Why has it worked so well in Finland? Even at the lower level, they have graduate teachers, and they are well paid. They are well paid. Consider, and this is also a World Bank advice that has always been given, the public sector is so large, most of those people have nothing to do. They dress up nicely, go into the offices, and they're not tasked with anything. Whereas the teacher, you spend every minute of your day doing something. Now, if they were to turn the tables and keep a very slim public system, they would look for job elsewhere. And then we begin to attract great minds. Or factor in the fact that you could bring people with certain level of qualification to come into the education system from time to time to share their knowledge. Plus, as I started mentioning before, we don't only have to depend on the teacher in the classroom. We can use technology. And when we say technology, it doesn't mean high-tech alone. Just before I left Kenya, we introduced low-tech. Low-tech meaning using internet. And that is the best form, because you do not expose the students to internet crimes. Everything is packaged. It's like a resource center as well, with information that you can collect. You can also post your curriculum, your assignments, and students can read about it wherever. So you can have a master-teacher kind of arrangement, where those master teachers are the ones producing the content of education. And it could be interactive, because then it will be up there in the internet, and make use of the tablets to really collect that, do their homework. It can be assessed, and it would make learning fun. And the student would also have free time to do other things, to play around, to visit places, to go as interns. All these are attractive ways of helping young people to begin to understand what they would like to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's possible.
Absolutely. And these days, I think there's so much talk about STEM, and you've been credited with really bringing STEM, science teaching, really to the forefront of UNESCO activities. So when you look at individual countries, especially when you were at UNESCO, because you see all these individual countries, perhaps we'll focus more on Africa. How do you see the pace of STEM, introducing STEM into our education?
Well, some have taken it very seriously. In Kenya, for instance, where I was based, and in some of the countries in Eastern Africa, like Seychelles, Mauritius, I mean, they're small island states comparable to the Gambia, they had invested in technology, doing more virtual. Like right now, we're talking about the bottleneck of the number of students that can go into university. Now with virtual universities, more could go. More could go. And more could really acquire skill. You can do all sorts of subjects, even with the science-based courses. You can also do it, using technology. You can mix all your chemicals and what have you through the technology that is there. So really, I think we have to catch up with the rest of the world. But most countries, in Nigeria, for instance, they're investing a lot in STEM education. Senegal, our next door neighbor.
So you reckon it's political will in the end, really?
There is political will. There needs to be that bit for it to happen. But the population as a whole, and I think, like for instance here, if we were to go that way, even the way we buy and sell could now introduce a bit of that technology. We don't have to always carry our money to bring it to you. Like, you have this orange money, free money, and those type of things. We get accustomed to it, and it makes life easy. And then everybody starts thinking technology.
Exactly, but who was it that said, yes, there's a lot of talk about technology, but some of these countries can't even guarantee a regular supply of electricity.
But,
see, the infrastructural, the basic.
There is the infrastructure, yes, but we have to look at alternative sources.
To that.
You have the solar. I mean, we have it, yet we have not invested more in getting the right type of knowledge, the scientific knowledge, in order to use the solar. So, I mean, we have to challenge ourselves at the end of the day. If we are laid back and we keep saying, oh, we do not have this, there could always be a better way. Maybe by investing in the technology, we will learn to do agriculture better.
Yes, it sounds...
The will to make it happen. If we begin to invest more on knowledge, invest more on the advancement of the people, making the people happy, and less on individual kind of, accumulation of wealth, we will do better. Right now you have those who are very filthy rich. They have lots of money. But then you have the majority with nothing. How can we create a little bit of equilibrium? And I believe the opportunity is there. Technology can help us to learn more, gather more knowledge, have a wider horizon of, things as they happen through, using the internet. You can self-learn. You don't have to think of education simply in the old-fashioned way where I must go to school. You can really educate yourself through the use of technology today. And there are those who are doing it. It's about the will.
That's it. That conception of education, isn't it? Which actually give, in many ways, vocational courses a bad name.
There you go.
That's
there you go.
We inherited.
Yeah.
And we are still suffering from that kind of mindset in many ways.
Well, yes, the mindset is there because people don't realize that everything we use is made by a craftsman. So why really look down on that craft? Technology itself, like look at this room and all of what's here. You cannot sit here and have a decent conversation as we're having right now without those behind the scene. They have skills, and that is technology. So it's a lot of rethinking education. I don't want to interrogate what is at the moment. I think we have to go through a process of rethinking education as a collective. We have to build collective intelligence to understand that, look, things are not the same. What do we want of our people? What do we want of our economy? What do we want, in terms of development? And make sure that everything is patterned along those lines. So for me, the examinations don't tell me anything other than what it had always told me. It's unfair. There are lots of biases. and therefore let's look for another way.
But is it a popular view? Do you see willingness to change things?
Well, I think we need to raise awareness. We need to raise awareness about it, not only in the Gambia, but in Africa as a whole. We are still held hostage to our colonial masters, and they've left us behind. They're doing things differently. You know, I mean, this strict adherence to categorizing students do not exist anymore. They do have, like in the US, for instance, you can go through the system without really writing any external examination. There are internal examinations, but there are continuous assessment. And when you so decide to go to university, you write to SAT. It's at that level that they choose those who want to go here or there or the other. But not everybody would want to go to university. Some would go to polytechnics. Some would go to, you know, in professional kind of institutions. And it all comes out together because the economy, society needs all sorts of skills for it to be very functional. So why should it only be university?
That's it. And I also wonder, why are we reluctant to see things that way?
Anyway, to tell you the truth, you know, if I had another chance to come back, you know, I don't think I would focus so much on the university aspect of it. If I have the ability, it will come, but it can come gradually. Like I told you, flexible entry and exit. Start something. You know, a lot of, like you talk about Bill Gates, dropped out of university, but look at him today. He's the wealthiest, you know, and so many others. You know, it's not to say that it's not good to have an education, but everything can be timed, and there is what we call self-education as well. You know, you can teach yourself a lot of things without going through the four walls of a classroom.
Exactly. It sort of reminds me of what our former Secretary General, Jabez Langley, Dr. Langley once said, that some people are certificated, others are educated. We spent the next decade or so trying to puzzle that one out. It seems very, very, very interesting. I wonder, right now, do you give advice to the government?
No.
Do they ever?
I think they have ministers. Ministers' role are to give advice. You know, I mean, you know, yeah, that's the role of a minister. Today we have made things a little bit cumbersome as a way of sharing, you know, dividing the cake. But definitely the role of the minister is to advise the president, the government, on matters related to that field of competence. And we complicate matters when you bring somebody else to do the same job. You know, that's how I see it.
That's more details there. What do you mean by that? By bringing somebody else to do the same job? What I mean is,
advisors.
As an advisor, well, perhaps behind the scenes, it's good to tap into the experience.
You can set up committees.
Committees.
Yeah, you can,
and
like the Ministry
of
Higher Education has co-opted me into their advisory body.
Exactly.
Yeah, those type of things, yes. But that's always like bringing a group of people together to help collectively support whatever reflections coming from the ministry. I think that I support. You know, and that's a very good thing, and it's a step in the right direction for the Minister of Higher Education. And so they should have replication of this in all the ministries so that they always have a body. The minister can always have a sounding board, you know, board here and there. This is what I was thinking about. What's your advice? Or bring them in to talk about issues. You know, that should be, we should be very open, because I believe there's a wealth of knowledge in this country, whether here or in the diaspora. And tapping that is also a way of helping to resolve the problems, you know.
That's it. I understand that in September, the Secretary General is convening a curriculum conference, as it were. As you said earlier, rethinking education. That's essentially what it is. When you look around, you'll perhaps look in the crystal ball. In 5 years' time, are you hopeful that will be sort of in the right direction? 10 years' time, but
no, like I said, you know, we have to always look at the human condition And we have to really try to sort of remove certain myths that define what we do and how we do it. If things should change, it should really be a conscious decision, not necessarily only at the global level, but even at the national level, to look at, precisely where the country needs to go, and not to be over-dependent on what advice come from outside, but first study what's inside, and then you can benefit from the advice that's coming from outside. Because when you talk about curriculum, it's never defined by a group outside. The curriculum must always respond to the needs at the country level. You have certain broad parameters of the way you want to go. Maybe you want to make sure that you go more scientific. You really want to have an injection of more technology into your system. But at the end of the day, the basic values would remain the same. And you need to have a mechanism to really mention, to make sure that the home is involved, the students themselves are very active in the process, and a government is willing and ready and able to steer the ship, in the direction that would produce the human capital to renew the system, because the human capital is what's neglected. And if we look at the human as a capital, we will begin to invest better, because we build it, we have the right environment. We don't build it, we are forever in crisis, trying to resolve one remedial problem after another. It doesn't take us anywhere. You take one step forward and 10 steps backwards. We should have a system where we don't have more of the young people just idle out there. These are brains that are wasting. How can we regain those brains? If we are rethinking education, we should think, probably that's where the minister is trying to say, let's reduce those who are failing. Because those who are failing are problems for society. They are the ones who would come back to be part of the gangsters and the drug addicts and the criminals, etc., etc. And mostly these are people who are very intelligent. But the system did not provide adequately for their needs. The home neglected them. They feel abandoned. So basically, this is the kind of interrogation that goes through the minds of young people. Why are you behaving the way you do? Well, where is the hope? We have to be able to build a hope for young people. And the best way to do that is not just to look at schooling, but look at an education system that is more holistic and embraces a whole lot more, right from early childhood through to university and the world of work. Because learning must not stop after you complete school. Even in the workplace, you should have opportunities for reskilling, retooling, whatever the situation, so that you get better at what you're doing. And you can get to the point where you could be more independent to create your own and be your own entrepreneur, now, employing a lot more people. We must move away from this mindset of, I need a job waiting for me out there. We need to look at how can I create jobs for myself and for others. And the more we can do that, the more we enable our economy to breathe and to really grow.
Exactly, and I've even heard the argument that one of the things, the features we talk about all the time, or public corruption and all of these things, perhaps these are things that should be reflected in the curriculum and how we deal with that.
Sure.
We're dealing with STEM, we want to take STEM and entrepreneurship and all the rest of it, but that's a very, very crucial area that should be reflected in the courses we do. How can schools, curricula help in dealing with this aspect?
Yeah, the purpose, everything you do, what's the purpose?
Exactly.
What really do you want of what you're doing? I mean, like I mentioned, launching Taft's book, and it was all about how do you inspire? How do you help people to dream big? And how do you help people to value themselves? Much of what's happening right now is you have young people who do not really value themselves. They don't see hope in the future. And so they go down the path of destructive behavior. This is a choice. It's a conscious decision not to really go the other way because there is no hope. And so the curriculum should be one that would build the hope. And that's what the curriculum in Finland is doing, where they get the kids to go out. They explore, they ask questions, they create this internship. Well before they complete high school, you go to the workplace and begin to learn. You know, if that mindset is created, even at home, the parents would begin to engage their children differently and get them prepared for the future, knowing that they won't leave school and get a job ready-made. They already have to start with that creativity of creating that opportunity for themselves. And it will change. It will be gradual. It won't happen in 5 years, in 10 years, but it can begin.
That's it. Especially that early childhood learning. Development. That's a very crucial area, because you understand that even over here, the school going age is at 7, but 50% of people within this bracket, boys within this bracket, are not going to school.
Yeah.
It's an extraordinary situation.
It is. It is.
We're coming towards the end. Sort of any final thoughts on education?
Well, education is a big question. It's an important question that we should really continue to reflect upon. But we should look at it more as that which helps to build purpose. And if our curriculum can interrogate purpose, the different purpose of each individual, and help students not to just think of themselves as what they can get from the education system, but what they can really demonstrate that they can do, probably, you know. But education can be made interesting if we see it as a collective responsibility. And government must do more, invest more, especially on teachers. Try to attract the best teachers, give them a decent salary, give them opportunities of good housing schemes, loan facilities. Those are the things that attract. It's not just the salary. It's about the conditions. Like if you're a teacher, all your students would have free education up to university. If you're a teacher, you would really have access to a housing scheme. You give priority to the teacher. Make them what they used to be in the past. You know, the village headmaster back then was almost like the president. Everybody would come to you. So also the teacher. Let us go back to that notion of the importance of the teacher. Then we will see a change. Then the next thing is the type of environment we create. Let's create the right environment, whether at the school or at home or in our communities. Let's always put children first. I think it will make a difference.
Thank you very much, Antaras Ndong-Jatta, for your insights there. And thank you very much, viewers, for joining us. Until next time, I'm Mamadou Mbodj. Goodbye.